So we all know that that drive to get ahead, right?
Yeah.
You see people who just sort of bulldoze their way through, seemingly unaffected by anyone else. It makes you wonder if maybe ruthlessness is the secret, the fast track.
Well, yeah. But what if that direct route has some, let's say, hidden tolls?
Okay.
What if climbing that ladder by, stepping on others actually leads somewhere pretty, well, desolate, uncomfortable, maybe?
Yeah, that's exactly the territory we're digging into today, isn't it?
It is, and we've gathered some really compelling stuff here. We've got philosophical takes from Schopenhauer,
Right.
some intense human drama from Dostoevsky.
Crime and punishment, yeah.
Exactly. And then findings from modern psychology, too.
Yeah.
So the core question, the real puzzle, is why might people who seem so cold, so calculating, who achieve their goals through ruthlessness, why might they end up facing their own, internal battles?
Okay, so where do we start? Schopenhauer. He wasn't exactly Mr. Sunshine, was he? He talks about this fundamental will to live, this deep urge for self-preservation, advancement.
Precisely. Schopenhauer saw this will to live as this, incredibly powerful underlying force. It drives us towards self-interest, pursuing our own advantage, often without much thought for others, really. It's primal, basic instinct we all have.
But then he throws in this other idea, this contrast. Compassion. Mitleid, he called it. How does that fit with ruthless ambition?
Right, Mitleid. For Schopenhauer, this was uniquely human. It's the ability to genuinely feel, to connect with someone else's suffering, almost like it's your own pain, which kind of breaks down those ego barriers we usually put up.
Okay.
So for someone to be truly ruthless, they basically have to suppress that innate compassion. It gets in the way.
So they're blocking it out.
Exactly. The insight here, I think, is that ruthlessness needs you to actively shut down this fundamental human thing, this empathy. But suppressing it, doesn't make it disappear, it just buries it. And that could lead to inner conflict down the line.
So they hit their goals by basically flipping off their empathy switch. But Schopenhauer's saying that switch doesn't just stay off.
Exactly right. Suppressing compassion isn't the same as getting rid of it. Schopenhauer argued that when ruthless actions inevitably hurt people,
Which they often do.
right, this buried compassion can bubble back up as guilt, maybe, or just this persistent unease, a deeper struggle even.
So it's the will to live clashing with this other higher part of us.
Precisely. And you'd think, achieving all that power, getting those goals, that should be fulfilling.
Yeah, outwardly it looks like success.
But Schopenhauer hints at the opposite, an inner emptiness. That relentless pursuit, the unlimited expansion of will, as he put it. It might bring external gains, sure, but can it ever truly satisfy our deeper emotional needs? He questioned that. This constant striving without compassion, without connection, it can lead to this profound loneliness, a kind of hollowness inside.
That idea of an inner moral compass. Wow, it just jumps off the page in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment.
Yes.
Raskolnikov, right? With his whole Superman theory.
Oh, absolutely. Raskolnikov convinces himself, intellectually, that murdering the pawnbroker is okay, even justified. A means to a greater good.
He thinks he's special. Above the rules.
Exactly. An extraordinary individual, not bound by boring old morality like the rest of us. He sees it as just a practical step for his big plans.
With that rationalization. It doesn't shield him, does it? Psychologically.
Not even close. Dostoevsky's portrayal is just brilliant. Raskolnikov is tormented, horrible nightmares, crippling guilt.
Yeah.
He eventually has a complete breakdown, really, which forces him to confess. It shows that even the smartest rejection of morality, intellectually, it can't completely silence that deep inner conscience. It's just too fundamental.
So even though he tried to think his way out of feeling bad, this inner sense, the conscience, he just wouldn't let go. Dostoevsky saw that as core to being human.
That's it. He saw conscience as this inescapable inner force. Even when people like Raskolnikov build these elaborate justifications for, terrible actions, their subconscious moral sense can still pop up as anxiety, self-loathing, just a feeling that something's deeply wrong. And Dostoevsky, coming from his Christian viewpoint, adds another layer. He saw these acts as violating a kind of divine moral order, which brings this sense of sin, adding even more fuel to that inner torment.
It's really fascinating how these older ideas, philosophical, literary, they seem to echo in modern psychology too. This idea of an evolutionary social instinct, pushing back against ruthlessness. That makes a lot of sense.
It absolutely does. Modern psychology suggests our capacity for guilt and empathy. It isn't just some abstract moral concept. It actually evolved.
As a survival thing.
Yeah, as a crucial mechanism for social cohesion. Sticking together as a group, these instincts encourage behavior that helps the group, which ultimately helps the individuals in the group survive better.
So when someone acts ruthlessly, even if it gives them a personal edge short term,
Yeah.
they're basically fighting against this really deep-seated wiring.
Exactly that. Ruthlessness might offer quick gains by pushing those instincts down, but they don't just, poof, vanish.
Right.
They can resurface as psychological pressure, that feeling of unease or just wrongness. And studies back this up. Even people high in Machiavellianism.
That's the term for being manipulative, lacking empathy.
Yeah, exactly.
Jay.
Even those individuals can still feel guilt or loneliness, especially in, say, close relationships or when their actions have really serious consequences. It makes sense, doesn't it? If you constantly put yourself first.
You end up alone.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Trust just evaporates in those kinds of interactions.
Right. Ruthless behavior, it just corrodes trust. When interactions are always about exploitation, manipulation, genuine connection, impossible. So that leads to social isolation.
Yeah.
And since we're fundamentally social animals, we need connection. So that isolation, it can feed that feeling of emptiness, even for the most outwardly successful, ruthless types.
Now, we also talked about internalized rules, that little voice inside. Freud's superego.
That's the one. The superego is basically our internalized moral guidebook, shaped by everything, upbringing, school, family, religion.
The culture, yeah.
It's like an internal judge, always comparing what you do to this learned moral code.
Yeah.
And it triggers guilt when you mess up, according to its rules.
So even if someone consciously decides, I'm going to be ruthless, they're still carrying around this baggage of what they were taught was wrong.
Exactly. When ruthless actions clash head-on with those deeply embedded norms, the superego can kick up a real storm inside. Guilt, self-reproach, feeling like you've failed your own standards, even if you say you reject those standards now.
Like Raskolnikov again.
Perfect example. Even as he was trying to intellectually justify the murder, reject traditional morality, his Orthodox Christian upbringing, the values he absorbed, they were clearly still working on him. Those internalized values kept exerting this powerful pressure on his mind, contributing massively to his suffering. It shows that even without police knocking on the door, that internal moral sense can be a really potent source of unease.
Yeah, this all paints, well, a pretty stark picture for the ruthless person. They might get what they want externally, but they end up surrounded by people who fear them, maybe respect them in a cold way, but don't connect with them. That sounds lonely.
It does. Ruthlessness, just by definition, involves exploiting trust, vulnerability. That creates huge barriers to genuine connection.
Right. Other people become tools, basically. Not allies, not friends. Interactions become strategy sessions, not moments of trust.
Didn't Schopenhauer point out that the more you rely on dominating others, the less you can be vulnerable yourself, which you need for real connection? It's a trap.
It absolutely is. And think about the constant effort involved. Maintaining control, preserving power through nonstop manipulation. You'd always be watching your back.
Sounds exhausting.
It does, constantly suppressing potential challenges. And Schopenhauer also had that point about the will to live, that endless drive for more. It can never actually be satisfied.
So even if they reach the top,
It's a shaky top. The nature of that drive means there's always a new threat, a new goal, a new insecurity bubbling up. This constant striving for dominance, it breeds anxiety, not peace, not real contentment.
But Schopenhauer didn't just leave us there in that bleak spot, did he? He offered this other idea, true power, through transcendent detachment. Which sounds like the total opposite of everything we've just discussed.
It's a direct counterpoint, yeah. Schopenhauer basically argued that the ruthless person, always terrified of losing control, is actually living in a state of deep vulnerability.
Because their power depends on others being weak.
Yeah.
And constant effort.
Exactly. It depends on manipulation. Whereas detachment, that's about not needing the external validation, not needing control. Precisely. By letting go of that relentless desire to dominate, Schopenhauer thought individuals could find this deep inner stability. When your self-worth isn't tied to external wins or controlling others, you're less vulnerable. You don't fear loss in the same way. You don't dread failure.
So it's not about giving up, being passive. It's a different kind of strength.
Yeah.
Inner resilience.
Exactly. Detachment in this view isn't weakness. It's not apathy. It's actually the highest form of strength. Think about it. Someone indifferent to praise or criticism. Hard to manipulate.
Right.
Someone who accepts loss without feeling personally diminished. Hard to control. Someone who doesn't need to push others down. Can't really be threatened in the same way. It's like stepping outside the dominance game,
Okay.
which leads to the state of inviolability because you're just not seeking that external approval or control anymore.
Mhm.
So ultimately, Schopenhauer's wisdom seems to be that true power isn't found in winning the constant battle for dominance.
But in leaving the battlefield,
Exactly. True wisdom isn't mastering manipulation, but transcending the need to dominate in the first place. The truly powerful are those who don't feel that compulsion to compete in what he saw as this ultimately unsatisfying, well, trap of the dominance game.
so, okay, bringing this all together, it really seems like while ruthlessness might look like a shortcut to getting what you want, our deep dive today has definitely uncovered some pretty significant hidden costs. We've talked about suppressed compassion turning into guilt,
Right.
our innate conscience piping up even when ignored, how our evolutionary social wiring pushes back against isolation, and how those deep-seated social norms can create real internal conflict.
Exactly. The paradox seems to be that this relentless chase for external goals using domination and manipulation, it often comes at the price of inner peace and genuine human connection.
Which really makes you think, maybe consider this. Where in your own life might that drive for control or for external validation? Where might that be creating its own, maybe subtle forms of unease? And what could you possibly gain by exploring a different kind of strength, maybe the strength of detachment?